Hey there, Kenneth French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by. Work-life balance. It's time to chat about work-life balance with Robert and Kaylee Fukui. What's up, guys?
Hey, Kenner. Glad to be here.
Yes, we are excited.
Wish we were on that island with you, though.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful Bainbridge Island, but you're from a beautiful island also. But I'm excited to talk about this because so many entrepreneurs out there don't do the work-life balance. They're working, 24 hours a day. They're not compartmentalizing, and it actually impacts negatively their family relationships, even though they might be making money. But there are ways to make money while having that work-life balance. So we're going to spend 15, 20 minutes chatting about that, and you're going to have some value for us, huh?
Sounds good. We'll try.
I like it. I like it. So what's the number? Give us the number one. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm struggling, I'm working 24 hours a day. What's the number one tip? Let's get right to it. What's the number one tip you would suggest to me as an entrepreneur who's working 24 hours a day?
Well, just the number one tip is thinking about margin, not just time. So the average entrepreneur is just putting a lot of time in, right? And whether the business is growing or struggling or whatever, we think the solution is just put more time in. Well, we're looking at how do we get more margin? And so when you're looking at like profit loss, right? The bigger your profit margins are, the better you have, because that's money in the bank, right? But if all you're doing is like in sales and volume, right? If you're just doing sales, but you have so many expenses that you have no margin, well, that's not good, right? So we've had clients where they're doing, $3-5 million a year in revenue and making nothing, versus same client, we adjust their pricing and their margins, and now they're doing $1.5 million in year in revenue, but making 50% net, 15% net, right? So which is better? So that's just a great example of thinking about margin. How do we get more margin in our day and make, be more productive, not just put more time in? So that's tip number one.
Yeah, I like that. Nice job, Robert, because I think so many times entrepreneurs don't think about margin. They just think about top end growth or gross, either one,
Right.
And they don't think about the margins. And the ways to obviously make more money potentially is increasing your margins on a net basis.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So by the way, before we get to it, why you guys? Why Robert and Kaylee? What's the deal? I mean, do you guys have the background? Do you guys have the cojones to? I get it, cojones. I think that's the point. To get it done for some of these listeners and viewers out there?
Well, I'd say from past experience, I'm third generation entrepreneur. So I came from an entrepreneur family, and my dad worked 6 days a week. Even to this day, my high school graduation, I'm not so sure my dad was there. So I'm a product of that. And it was challenging growing up in that whole household. And we didn't want our clients to have to go through that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the same thing. Actually, my dad wasn't a business owner. He was a pastor, but same thing. His focus was so much in the ministry, the family took a back seat. And so we're just kind of a product for an environment. And so when we started our own business, we started to repeat the past, basically. I started grinding it out, working till 2 a.m., right? Because I felt, the kind of the operative word was busy. Like we had to be busy. It almost seemed like if I didn't say I was busy, like, you greet a friend and you say, how you doing? You ask how they're doing. And the number one response I would hear was, I'm busy.
I'm busy.
And then I started saying the same thing because I thought, well, if I'm not busy, I must not be doing well. Right. And so I started adopting that same language. And then, of course, practically speaking, I started doing that. And then it got to the point where I'm like, wait a second, this is not what I signed up for. I'm moving from corporate environment to have my own business, to have more freedom. Yet I'm working till 2 a.m. This is stupid. Right.
It does not work.
And if I take the money I'm bringing in divided by the hours, I'm making less money than the Chick-fil-A guy, right? Yeah. Yeah. And so I said, I guess why trust us? Why we're the person with the solutions? Because we just decided there's got to be a better way. That's all it comes down to. And we just figured out, just like in business, if there's a problem in the business, we're going to figure out how to fix it, right? But in our work and our life, when it comes to work-life balance, we've just accepted it as normal. Right? We hear from business gurus, you got to go all in, you got to sacrifice your personal life, don't expect to have a social life, right? And we just bought into that.
Yep.
And then we said, wait a second, there's got to be a better way. And so the first step I took to try to reduce my hours is set boundaries. We talked, just before we got we went live here, how, your 3-day weekends and you don't take calls after 4 o'clock on Thursdays. Set boundaries, right? So I did the same thing. I said, okay, what's the boundary I can create? Because I was working the corporate job and then starting the business on the side to eventually move. So I did have to work evenings after my day job, but I thought instead of going to bed at 2 a.m., what if I got to bed by 11 p.m.? That's 3 hours a night times 5. That's 15 hours. That's 2 nights of sleep, basically extra, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the first boundary I created, was get to bed by 11. And then I figured out what's the stuff that's just keeping me busy, but that's not productive. And that was the first step. And so really it was just by our own experience growing up and then our own experience as we're moving into business and then saying, hey, there's got to be a better way. We want to prioritize our life, our marriage, and still be able to build a successful business. And how do we do that?
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's like the Pareto principle. 80% of your resources are gotten from 20%, top 20%. And the way I look at it, if you have a high top 20%, you're going to be that much more productive. And if you only have, let's say, 4 days a week to work versus 5, you're going to try to be more productive during those 4 days a week.
Absolutely.
And so your minimum check, instead of, I'm making this up, $10,000 for a service or whatever, might be $20,000. So your net, your margin ends up being better, and you could still spend more time at home. I think that's brilliant. I mean, people have got to look at the end result first before they look at the beginning result. That's the way I look.
And to your point, the productivity research shows that we're only mostly productive 20% of the day.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. That's
So
totally true.
80% of the time, we're really there's a lot of busy work, right? So it's really focusing on what makes us the most productive and focusing on that.
Yeah, I love it. Nice. All right. So, excuse me, I have a cold. So let's go back to the margins. So you mentioned margins really important. That's the first thing people should look at, which is 100% true in my opinion. What's another tip that would add value to a viewer listener who's an entrepreneur? Let's say they're a real estate agent or operating a little business, and they want to work-life balance and make more money, etc.
I'd say redo your whole calendar. Put down what your priorities are, like your family, your date night, your children got a ball game. Put those things down. We have a weekly meeting, the two of us, Monday at 3:30. Put that on the calendar first, and then put all your work stuff around that. Otherwise, you won't have time for family if it's all filled up with work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look at Kaylee. That's exactly right. So, okay. So how much time do you guys, you don't have to give me that specific information, but I'll ask this anyway. How much time do you allocate to on Monday at 3:30 to private time versus business?
So the private time is kind of daily. Every morning, we spend about 15 to 20 minutes first thing in the morning. And what we do is, because we're people of faith, we pray together and then just do our check-in, right? So that's a minimum 15 minutes a day, right? And then, we'll talk throughout the day, but that's that dedicated time. And then the weekly meetings is 90 minutes. And it's a mix of personal stuff and business stuff and checking calendars, syncing calendars, really getting on the same page and staying on the same page is what it is.
We go over our finances, our vision to make sure we're on track. It's so easy to get sidetracked if you're like me, because I have 101 ideas for Robert to implement. So those are some of the things.
And then quarterly and yearly, we have more extended meetings, our business meetings. And so those are the things that, you got to have those dedicated moments for those kind of things, because otherwise what we do as couples, we're busy, we're running back and forth, and we're just shouting things back and forth as we're passing. And then things fall through the cracks, right? Or she brings up something, she comes to my office and wants to raise an issue, and I'm in the middle of something.
He's in the middle of writing content, so he's like really serious, zoned in, focused.
So I'll snap back or something like that, right? As opposed to saying, hey, is this a good time or not? If not, when? Do we wait for our weekly meeting, or is it the first thing in the morning? We talk, our check-in time, or sometime during the day where I said, hey, let me finish this project up, and then at 3:30 I'll come back to you. We'll talk about it, right? So we got to have places to put those kind of be able to talk about those issues when we're focused on each other, and not just two ships passing the night and throwing things back and forth. And then what happens is we get arguments because it's not a good time for me to bring it up. And then we get an argument because I'm just upset. right? And so that's why those, prioritizing on your calendar, as Kaylee was saying earlier, putting those priority moments in your calendar is so important. Otherwise, it doesn't happen because our calendar gets filled up with all the busy work, the business, volunteer work, or just errands or whatever, right? And so we don't prioritize. If our marriage, our family is a priority, then put those things on the calendar. Make
Yep.
sure, hey, I want to get to my kids' ball games, or I'm going to coach. I mean, we're just talking to this guy, Bob Bodine, and he's a big sports executive search guy. So he places like Bob Selig in a national, in a Major League Baseball league, for one example. And so he travels all the time, but he says, no matter what, I was always back to coach my kids' games.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And if there's a meeting in California, he says, okay, but I need to be back home by X amount of time or X day, right? And so that was a priority, even though he's busy traveling. But he just made sure that those things he protected.
Yeah, that's okay. I got you. So a lot of your coaching, excuse me, a lot of your coaching is really work-life balance, which we already discussed, and you actually kind of do the priority, help them prioritize, also doing margins, figuring out the margins, and then at the same time, you're meeting with them twice a month, meaning the clients, and getting them to understand kind of that philosophy, and therefore them to be more profitable. That's kind of a summarization of your situation. All sound right?
Yeah, basically, we start with home and say, okay, what's the priority? How do we create your business plan for home? And then we move into the business and say, okay, now how do we do this better?
Yeah, I totally get it. I totally get it. All right. So, and by the way, let's say someone wants to get a hold of you. I always forget this. Let's say someone wants to get a hold of you. How do they get a hold of you? And I think there's a book out there that sounds like it would add value to some of these people who are trying to help their business and their personal life.
Yeah, Tandem, the Married Entrepreneur's Guide for Greater Work-Life Balance. And let's go to marriedentrepreneur.co/vast voice. So we have a specific landing page just for your audience, and in it,
some free goodies.
Yep, in it is access to our book, but there's also a free download for work-life balance as well.
Tell us about the free goodies. I think some of the people probably like that out there, right?
It's basically it's almost like a workbook, digital workbook to help you, just the stuff we're talking about, how to create boundaries, how to communicate better. And then in the business side, how to increase your margin of time and money in the business so you can make more, but have more time to be able to dedicate in the things that are most important. Including, like, a lot of times in business, entrepreneurs are so busy just doing the work that we don't get to work on the business.
Mm-hmm. The things that we love a lot of times is the last thing we're doing.
Yeah.
Because we were so in the weeds, we don't think about the greater forest.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to create margin of time in the business too, so the business owner can focus more on the business stuff, more the vision, the long-term planning, and all
Your
those
zone of
things.
genius.
Yep. Yeah. So okay, tell me a little bit more about the book and or the free worksheet, because I think it sounds like that's a good spot to go to, so it can add value right off the bat, and people can learn about your philosophy, your situation, how you help some of those people out there. So tell us a little bit about both, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the free worksheet probably is a good place to start if you don't want to pay $20 for the book. Although, like I said, one tip in a book that can help your life or your business or both, right?
Probably
Is-
way more than
Not worth $20. Yeah.
more than the book. But the worksheet is kind of the streamlined version of what's basically in the book, essentially. How to prioritize your family time, boundaries, setting boundaries, and how to create more margin in your time and money in the business. But the book goes more in depth as far as our story. And then each chapter is dedicated to some aspect, whether it's conflict resolution, setting boundaries, getting on the same page. And then in business, how to increase your margin of time, how to increase your margin of money, and how to really measure performance. So you're focusing your business efforts on the right areas of business. So,
and then at the end of every chapter, there's a workbook.
In it. Oh, I hear it. So it's worth the $20 is what you're saying.
Yeah. And then you can also, there's also a link there to contact us if you want to talk to us directly.
Perfect. So, and give us one case study where you've completely turned the entrepreneur's life around. Let's say there's an entrepreneur who's working, 1,000-hour weeks. Because there seems like there are some out there, right? And you've completely made it so now they're spending time with their family, and they're also, who knows, making more money. Give us one case example without mentioning names, unless you can.
Yeah. Well, a great example was it's an e-commerce company, and they weren't even barely paying themselves, and they're doing $5 million a year revenue too. And so, and there was, like I said, there's so much expenses that they had very little left over, even just to pay themselves. And so, what we did was, number one was looking in the business and say, you're spending too much time in the wrong areas. You're spending too much money in marketing. You're just not getting.
Said the marketing guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm a marketing guy, but it's like you're spending way too much marketing. Basically, what it came down to was they weren't really getting a good return on investment on anything they're doing in their business.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and they're just bringing in revenue, but they weren't very efficient. They weren't getting a very healthy return on investment, including the owner's time, which was focused on doing everything, micromanaging and all that kind of stuff, right? So how we're able to get them to have more, focus on be focused more back home is, Mr. Business Owner and Mrs. Business Owner, what's the most productive use of your time? What's your zone of genius, as Kaylee was saying? And let's start focusing on that. And then let's empower your team to do the work.
Because he already had a great team.
And they bragged about the team, but they didn't. It's like they trusted them, but they didn't trust them, right? So they're hovering when they didn't need to, which is wasting time, right? And so once they're able to realize that their team was already equipped to do the work, they could focus in on what's more productive for them. And then assigning this metrics to the marketing, to operations, to the warehouse issues and staff. And once we got the metrics down, then we say, how do we improve all these different area metrics, like click-through rates on the website, or even pay-per-clicks on the Google ads, right? How do we increase those metrics? Not by spending more money, but how do we just improve the performance? And by that alone is going to increase sales, and it's of course going to increase margin because they're not spending more money or time.
Yep.
We're just increasing margin. So just one snapshot of how we went from them losing $800,000 in 1 year to getting into the black in 12 month span, and freeing up their time, being able to spend more time together, was just a beautiful thing to watch.
Nice. I like it. That's a good case example. It's a very good case example. I'm sure there's many out there. Let's circle back one last time. How do people get a hold of you for the workbook or again for the book itself? Or let's say they want your consulting. Any of the
marriedentrepreneur.co/vast voice.
And all that's right there at the landing page.
I like it. All right. How about in closing, any last thoughts? Maybe some things that we didn't talk about that we probably should have that can add some value again to the listeners and viewers out there?
We like to get our couples to sit down and come up with a vision for the business and for their personal life or as a family, because that helps keep us strong in a bond and we can work together in the same direction. And a lot of times it's a better plan than it was with just one of you, because you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's a great idea. Let's do that. And it's something to look forward to.
Look at you guys. That's very good. I like how you guys are working together, and it sounds like it's helping your relationship, and it's also helping your business, helping net worth, and making, who knows, more jobs out there. It's better for the overall economic environment as well.
Yeah. And for me, you have more time than you think to prioritize your family life and still build a very highly successful business. 5 minutes, just intentional time. We interviewed this guy, David Meltzer, and he's a big sports marketing agent. And he told us that, he gives each of his kids 5 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, just to talk, right? And then he says, I give them 5, they only give me 3. So basically he allocates 5, but they only give him 3 because that's all he wanted to do is talk. But it's just an intentional time to connect, and they know dad has got their back, right? Is what they needed. Because how many times do you really have dedicated eye-to-eye, face-to-face talk without your phone or stuff going on in your head, right? 3 to 5 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but yet it's a lot because we don't dedicate that kind of personal focused time with each other usually. And so that's just an example of, it doesn't take as much time as you think to really build successful, healthy relationships. We overestimate how much time it takes. It's just the focused time. It's the quality of time. It's not the amount of time.
I like it. I like this good. It's a quick message, but good message to entrepreneurs out there who really, should spend more time at home doing, work-life balance, and then also making a couple of pennies here and there. Robert, Kaylee, Fukui, I really appreciate the time you spent. I think it's added some value in a quick fashion, which is awesome. And at the same time, people now know how to get a hold of you if they're interested in either the workbook, the book, or your consulting.
Yeah.
Once again, this is Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Thanks, everybody.